Before the lights of Hollywood washed their faces in gold, before the applause and the magazine covers, many of the stars we still idolize were living very different lives. Behind those elegant smiles and sparkling eyes were stories of struggle, defiance, and sometimes crime. These actors and actresses who defined the golden age of cinema didn't all start their journey on movie sets. Some began in police stations behind bars or in the shadows of choices they'd rather the world forget. What happened before fame was often darker than the silver screen would ever allow us to see. Let's step back into that hidden chapter of Hollywood's history. The stories of 15 legendary stars whose roads to stardom were paved with more than just ambition. That if this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 1. Humphrey Bogart. Before he was the face of film noir, the man who made cynicism stylish, Humphrey Bogart was a young man searching for direction. Born into privilege, but restless and defiant, Bogart was expelled from the elite Phillips Academy for what officials called repeated bad behavior. The official record never said exactly what he did, but rumors swirled. Fights, drunken pranks, and vandalism. It was an early sign of his rebellious streak. Later, while working for the U.S. Navy, Bogart was involved in a bar fight that left him with a distinctive scar on his upper lip, the same scar that became a part of his legendary image. Before he was ever Rick Blaine of Casablanca, Bogart was a young troublemaker with a sailor's temper and a knack for chaos. 2. Joan Crawford. Before she was a Hollywood icon known for her elegance and intensity, Joan Crawford's youth was shadowed by desperation. Born Lucille Fay, Le Sueur in Texas, she grew up poor, working in laundries and restaurants long before she found the bright lights. As a teenager, she was arrested for stealing dresses from a department store, a desperate attempt to look like the glamorous women she idolized. She wanted to belong somewhere better, and that theft, though minor, was a reflection of hunger, not for food, but for transformation. The woman who later embodied perfection on screen had once been a frightened girl willing to take risks to escape the dust and shame of poverty. 3. Clark Gable. Before becoming the king of Hollywood, Clark Gable's early life was rough, dirty, and full of mistakes. Growing up in Ohio, he worked odd jobs just to survive, selling ties, repairing tires, even working in oil fields. But survival came at a cost. Gable was arrested in his early 20s for theft when he was caught stealing tools from a workshop. He later called it one of the darkest moments of his life, saying it taught him how quickly a man could lose everything. Ironically, that arrest gave him the humility and toughness that defined his on-screen persona, the charming rogue with a wounded soul. 4. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was discovered at a malt shop, but her story before that discovery wasn't all innocence and movie star luck. At 15, she was living alone in Los Angeles after her father's tragic murder. She was rebellious, often skipping school and wandering into nightlife she wasn't old enough to see. Police records show Turner was briefly detained for underage drinking and public misbehavior. The same face that would later make her one of MGM's biggest stars was once seen as a wild child running too fast toward adulthood. Hollywood didn't save her, it simply gave her a bigger stage for the chaos. 5. Spencer Tracy. Before Spencer Tracy became one of Hollywood's most respected actors, he was a troublemaker in almost every sense of the word. As a young man in Milwaukee, Tracy was expelled from multiple schools for fighting and stealing. His parents sent him to the Marquette Academy, hoping discipline would change him, but instead he was caught breaking into a local drugstore with friends. The incident could have ended his future, but it also led to his first experience of accountability. Years later, when reporters asked how he understood troubled characters so well, Tracy said, "Because I used to be one." 6. Marlon Brando. Before Marlon Brando revolutionized acting, he was known not for talent, but for trouble. Expelled from multiple schools for insubordination, Brando had a rap sheet that included petty theft and vandalism before he was even 18. His rebellious energy, which later electrified a streetcar named Desire, was born long before Hollywood. He stole bicycles, fought teachers, and was known for pranks that bordered on destruction. Once he was arrested for smashing a vending machine after it ate his nickel. "I had a temper," Brando later admitted, "and the world felt like a machine I couldn't control." The irony? That same anger became the raw fire behind his unforgettable performances. 7. Buster Keaton. Known as the Great Stone Face, Buster Keaton was one of silent cinema's greatest geniuses, but his childhood was almost criminally dangerous. Forced into vaudeville acts by his parents at just 3 years old, Keaton was tossed around the stage in physical stunts that could have gotten his family arrested for child endangerment today. At 6, he was detained by child welfare officers who accused his father of abuse during performances. His father defended it as show business, and Buster was returned to the act. That early brush with the law and pain shaped his stoic, unflinching expression, the mask of a man who'd already learned that laughter and suffering often shared the same stage. 8. Mae West. Before she was the queen of double entendre and sexual confidence, Mae West was a criminal, at least in the eyes of 1920s America. In 1927, she was arrested and jailed for corrupting the morals of youth with her Broadway play Sex. The show was so scandalous that police raided the theater mid-performance. Instead of shame, West wore her 8-day jail sentence as a badge of honor. She strutted into the prison in silk underwear and left a celebrity. Her crime? Daring to speak about what society wanted to hide. Hollywood would later tame her image, but not her defiance. 9. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the perfect swashbuckler on screen, but off-screen, his life was full of dangerous adventures that often crossed legal lines. Before fame, he was expelled from school in Australia for theft and fighting. He drifted through jobs, sailor, boxer, gold prospector, and was even accused of stealing jewelry during a stint in New Guinea. Though charges were dropped, Flynn's reputation as a troublemaker followed him to Hollywood. He later faced far more serious accusations during his stardom, but what made him magnetic on screen was that hint of danger, the glint in his eyes that said he'd already lived on the edge and survived. 10. Hedy Lamarr. Before Hedy Lamarr became a screen goddess and an inventor whose ideas helped shape modern Wi-Fi, she was a fugitive. Born in Austria, she married an arms dealer who had deep ties to Nazi Germany. Trapped in luxury but desperate for freedom, Lamarr drugged her maid, stole her jewels, and escaped the country disguised as a servant. For days, she traveled in hiding before boarding a ship to America. What looked like glamour on screen was really the calm of a woman who had outrun danger and knew she could again. Her crime was survival, and in her case, it was perfectly justified. 11. Cary Grant. Before becoming the symbol of Hollywood sophistication, Cary Grant, then known as Archibald Leach, was a runaway. At 13, after a violent argument with his father, he fled home and joined a traveling acrobat troupe. Living illegally in stage houses, sleeping under theater rafters, and lying about his age, Grant technically broke every vagrancy and labor law of the time. But that life of deception built the man who could later charm anyone with a single look. The boy who had to survive by pretending grew into the actor who made pretending into an art. 12. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow's life was brief, bright, and complicated. Before she became Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, she eloped at 16, lying about her age on a marriage certificate, an act that was illegal at the time. She fled with a much older man to escape her overbearing mother. For months, they lived under assumed names until her mother tracked her down and brought her back. It was scandalous, even criminal for the era, but the teenage runaway would later become the embodiment of forbidden glamour. Every role she played carried the same electricity as her real life, a mix of innocence and rebellion that the world couldn't resist. 13. Robert Mitchum. Few stars lived as close to their on-screen personas as Robert Mitchum. The cool, cynical actor of Out of the Past really had lived outside the law. In 1948, at the peak of his fame, Mitchum was arrested for marijuana possession during a police raid in Laurel Canyon. But before Hollywood, his troubles ran deeper fistfights, vagrancy arrests, and stints on chain gangs while hitchhiking across the country. Mitchum later joked, "I was born with a rap sheet." His authenticity made him unique. He didn't need to act like a rebel, he already was one. 14. Rita Hayworth. Before becoming the epitome of beauty and grace, Rita Hayworth had a past filled with pain. Her father, a strict and controlling dance instructor, illegally falsified her age so she could perform in nightclubs before she was even 15. That deception led to multiple legal warnings and police investigations. Authorities accused her father of exploiting her, and the scandal forced the family to leave several cities. Hayworth's early exposure to that world shaped her into a woman who danced with elegance but carried invisible scars. When she finally became a star, her eyes still held the sadness of a girl who grew up too fast under her father's control. 15. Mary Pickford. Known as America's sweetheart, Mary Pickford was one of Hollywood's first global icons. But few know she was also a shrewd businesswoman who operated in gray legal territory. In the early 1910s, Pickford quietly bought up large portions of undeveloped Los Angeles land under multiple false names, a move designed to sidestep property laws that restricted her rights as a woman. She was later investigated for financial manipulation, though no charges were filed. That same daring instinct helped her co-found United Artists, a company that gave actors creative control for the first time. Mary Pickford didn't just break laws, she broke barriers.